The morning my cedar fence split my neighbor's driveway like a knife, she called the HOA the city the sheriff. And when none of that worked, she reached for gasoline by sundown. I had a case number on the counter, a hearing date on the calendar, and a trail cam. Still of her, in a bathrobe, prying at my screws like she was immune to gravities. That was the day. I learned this wasn't about a fence line at all. It was about power, who thinks they own it, and what they'll do to keep it. I'm Jake Miller. I bought a tired lakeside ranch at the far edge of Cedar Ridge, Maple County, a place with a deep porch and a narrow strip of land that curves along a shared gravel drive. Before I signed, I checked the records. The previous owner had opted out of Cedar Ridge Estates HOA and filed it with the county. So my parcel sits outside their kingdom. That detail sounded small. At the time, turns out, it's the whole story. First week I moved in, Pam Whitman walked over like a runway inspector in a tracksuit clipboard. In one hand, plastic badge shining like a toy. "Sheriff Star," she said. "I'd need HOA approval for any exterior change." I told her calmly. "My lot isn't under the HOA, and I can show the recorded opt-out." Her smile pulled tight, like fishing line. "We'll see about that," she said, and marched off like she'd just stamped a passport. At first, I laughed it off. You pick your battles right. But then she started papering my door with community standards, snapping photos when I trimmed a branch, sliding a violation for non-conforming mailbox height under my door at 6 a.m. I framed that notice as a joke, and the joke got stale fast. So I hired a licensed surveyor before installing a deer fence. He planted bright orange flags, handed me the map, and left. Next morning, every flag was gone. Not most. All replaced by fresh tire tracks leading right under Pam's Lexus. I knocked. She cracked the door. 2 inches chlorine perfume curling out. I asked if she'd seen my markers. She smiled sweet and said they were litter. "You're welcome," I told her. "Those markers show my boundary." She said that driveway has been theirs since the 80s. Her husband poured it himself, I said. The county disagrees. She tossed the line, "You can't move in and rewrite history and shut the door." You know what I mean. I don't love fighting. I do love records. I started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, doorbell clips. Filed a boundary encroachment notice with the Maple County clerk, CC'd the sheriff. And city zoning kept my emails polite and my folder thick meanwhile. Pam escalated parking half on my side so I couldn't reach my tool shed, telling delivery drivers my address didn't exist. Then she appeared with a contractor on my grass, announcing an HOA-approved driveway expansion. "Not across my lot," I said. "Prove jurisdiction." And instead of yelling, I pulled a fence permit. Maple County FP 234178 booked an early crew and set a motion trail camera near the line because something in my gut said the flags wouldn't be her last trick. The fence went up at dawn, posts sunk exactly on the recorded line concrete. Set cedar panels shining like a clean verdict from her porch. It looked like a wooden truth, splitting her driveway into what she wanted and what was real. She sprinted out in yoga pants, phone up. "You can't put that there. You'll block my car," she yelled. "Your car has been on my land for months." I said I just corrected the map. She called it harassment, said I was targeting her because she's a woman. I said, "I'm targeting the theft of my property." Markers kept it flat. Let the paperwork talk. 30 minutes later, Jerry from the HOA wandered into my yard with aviators and a clipboard and told me I'd erected an unapproved structure in HOA jurisdiction. I handed him the opt-out. And survey, he read. For 10 seconds. swallowed. Said he'd confirm with the board and left that afternoon. An anonymous complaint arrived, claiming my fence violated setback rules. The city asked for photos and measurements and a re-inspection fee. I sent everything, plus the signed permit the city cleared me in a day that night. The trail cam pinged the still. It's pure comedy. Pam in a robe flashlight. In one hand, the other twisted in my hardware. I printed it and taped it to the fence with a note that said, "Smile for the camera." She stayed inside for 2 days. When she came back, it was with edited screenshots on the HOA Facebook page to make me look unhinged. I mailed the neighborhood the original side by side with her edits. No commentary. Just receipts. Yeah, that happened. She tried pouring a new slab on her lawn. Without a permit, the city tagged it with a stop work order and a fine. The concrete hardened into a gray tongue that led nowhere. Then came the county. Hearing folding chairs, neighbors pretending they were just curious. Pam's entourage lined like a pep rally. The hearing officer memo. Ramirez called us to order. Pam jumped up, waving papers, and claimed I'd forged the survey when it was my turn. I slid a folder across the table. Permits. Certifications and the trail cam video. Ramirez pressed play. The room went quiet. Pam said, "That's out of context." Ramirez kept his eyes on the screen and said, "Context won't change what we can see." He validated my survey, affirmed the permit closed the dispute in my favor, and recommended a civil penalty for her false filing. I should have felt done. Instead, I went home and smelled gasoline on one post. Rain had done the mercy work. I called the sheriff. They bagged a soil sample and left me a report number the next morning. Pam stood by the fence, sipping coffee, and said, "Beautiful day, huh?" And I said it really is, because I was already playing a longer game. The HOA held its annual barbecue. Normally, I skip. This time, I rented a vendor booth at the entrance with a banner that said, "Know your property rights." Free boundary basics. On one side, I set county maps on the other, a laminated blurred still labeled "Case Study, Unauthorized Encroachment." No names. The robe was unmistakable. Neighbors laughed softly. Jerry winced. Pam arrived in a wide brim hat, froze, marched over, and said, "You have no right to post that." I handed her the county public records policy in one page and said all public. The crowd had a moment she fled, and for a second I thought it might all be over. Then new neighbors moved into Pam's old house. Dylan Brooks, quiet engineer vibe. Maya Chen, friendly like a brochure. I dropped a welcome basket. She thanked me and kept staring past me at the fence. "So that's the famous wall?" she said with a half smile. "It's a fence," I said. "Famous is your word for a couple of weeks, nothing." Then, little things. The gate latch undone in the morning when I always lock it. Motion lights flicking in the night with nothing on the videos. One night I heard voices by the fence. They froze with flashlights hitting the soil, just checking drainage. Maya said too fast at 1 a.m. I asked. "We work late," she laughed. Next morning, the dirt near a post looked freshly turned 2 nights later. The camera caught Dylan kneeling there and pocketing something small and metallic. Looked like a survey stake, and then a typed note appeared in my mailbox. "You think you've won, but you don't know what's under your fence," my attorney Ava told me. Don't engage document, so I did. Then I found a narrow cavity behind a board, inside a plastic-wrapped envelope in Pam's handwriting. If you're reading this, someone sold my house. Don't trust them. They know about the markers. The fence hides more than a boundary. It hides what they paid me to forget. My stomach dropped. I dug 2 feet down and hit a rusted steel box inside, were old deeds. Survey invoices, a $25,000 cashier's check receipt. To Northline Survey Group and a revised boundary agreement bearing the signature of Greg Whitman, HOA president, 15 years ago. And Pam's ex, the language turned buffer land into community property and silently stretched the HOA's reach across parcels that never consented. Mine included, I scanned everything. Made 3 copies. Bank lockbox package to Ava. 1 sealed under my porch rail. If anything happened to me, the truth would outlive me. The next morning, Dylan knocked and stood in my kitchen without sitting. He looked around like he was measuring exits and said, "I think you found something that doesn't belong to you." I said, "You mean what your people buried to move lines?" He smiled like a man with a plan and said, "No one will believe you. She's a joke, and you're a guy with a camera. We'll deny everything." I said, "I already sent copies to the county and my attorney." I hadn't yet. I just wanted to see his face. His smile turned off like a switch. Maya appeared in the doorway and said we should go that night. The camera pinged again. 2 figures walked the fence and poured a shining stripe along the base. I grabbed the hose and soaked it. The sheriff came. Same deputy. "What is it with this property line?" he asked. I said, "I'm starting to think it's cursed in the morning." Channel 12 parked by my mailbox. I let them film what I could prove, scorched soil. Police report a fence that refused to blink. I didn't mention the box. You don't show your whole hand when the table is still filling. That night, the county investigator called. "We need to see those documents." There's an active fraud case. I handed over clean copies with chain of custody. Signed 3 days later, cruisers rolled up to Dylan and Maya's. A flatbed took their SUV, and they walked out in cuffs. The headline read, "New homeowners arrested." In HOA developer fraud probed the county unsealed records. And suddenly it wasn't just my cul-de-sac, it was a pattern. Old lines shifted for profit. Familiar names on signatures. Familiar hands on the pen. The HOA called an emergency meeting. I sat in the back and listened as they read a list of Pam's greatest hits. Harassment, false filings. Misuse of HOA resources. Interference with inspections. The chair called for a vote to revoke her membership and remove her from all positions. The room went so still, I could hear the AC hands. Rose unanimous. Pam whispered, "You can't do this." The chair set her badge on the table and said, "We just did no cheering. Just that quiet thud of power moving from one hand to another. And we cut there. If you want the clean ending, cuffs, gavel badge laid flat. But the truth is messier. Power doesn't leave it. Changes clothes. It gets a new clipboard. It learns a softer smile. That's why I keep my permits by the door and the trail cam charged. Not because I expect another Pam, because I expect people to be. People, you know what I mean. So tell me where you stand. If someone stole your flags, would you argue first or document first? If a board can stretch a line on a map, what else can they rewrite about you? Maybe you've lived a version of this with a boss, a committee, a neighbor who calls control order. Drop your take in the comments. Push back. If you disagree, share your story. If you've got one, and if you think more folks need to hear that. Badges fade, but paperwork doesn't pass this along to the next person, staring down a fence line wondering who really owns it.